What's happening, chaps? Welcome back to another episode of Chaps Chat with your boy Ollie.
And me, Dom.
This episode, we will be focusing on now the back end of COVID,
Yeah.
but also the effects that it had on people during COVID in terms of the anxiety, depression, and all aspects of mental health. So, before we get started, how are you, mate? All good?
Yeah, all good, mate. Obviously, we've been away for a few weeks, away from the podcast room anyway, but obviously had birthdays and that going on. But we're back here now. Feels good to be back in the studio, bro, to be honest with you. But how's things been your side anyway?
Yeah, good, mate. Yeah, same as that as well. But it's hard, isn't it, at the moment? Like working around this.
Yeah.
We got jobs as well. So yeah, apologies about the delay, but it's always worth it.
Yeah, we're here now. That's the main thing, isn't it?
That's it. But we have been active on the Instagram, doing the
Defo.
Instagram lives with Sam.
Yep.
And we've got some more lined up. We've got some more guests lined up to come on the podcast. So yeah, we haven't been resting too much. We've been working in the background.
Yeah, that's it, mate. And obviously got some real, I guess, exciting guests coming on with a lot of different perspectives. So I think it's definitely going to be an interesting couple of months just with the people we have on. But again, I think this is a good time to cover this specific subject today. I mean, obviously, mainly how mental health has been or affected people off the back of the pandemic or in the pandemic. Because I think now I'm a person who likes to reflect back on things anyway, and I think hopefully, fingers crossed, we're in a place now where this is kind of finishing to an extent. I mean, some things I feel like won't change too much in certain circumstances, but it's good to be, I guess, to kind of see the horizon at this point. But also I feel like it's a good point to look back and see kind of what damage outside of the most noticeable damage off the back of the actual pandemic itself, and how's that actually affected other areas of people's life too.
Yeah, 100%. And as you say, hopefully it is now at the end of it.
Yeah.
But it is something that's left a permanent scar.
100%.
I think on a lot of people's well-being, and it's something to go down in history as well. Would never have expected that to happen in your lifetime. I mean, these things obviously happen, but not to that degree where you're locked down fully. Like, you know, the plague and things.
Yeah.
Back then.
A long time, bro. I thought that was only like a thing in school, innit? Like a little story or something. You know what I'm saying?
Didn't hear about them being locked down.
Nah, for real, mate. They're probably out and about, but don't know if that helped them, to be honest with you. But,
definitely not. But yeah, cool. So before we go into like the statistics on it and other people's opinions of how it's affected them, let's start with us first and how it affected us. So for you, what was the main thing that affected you during COVID?
So I think I've kind of mentioned this in little parts of the podcast before, but it was like probably the worst time I've had with anxiety, right? Because before that, I probably had symptoms of anxiety, but it wasn't in a place where it's so bad that I'd identified that's what it was. But within the pandemic, it obviously isolated a lot of people. So for me, don't get me wrong, I wasn't completely isolated. There were still points where I was seeing my friends, obviously. But in the week, from where I'm someone who usually works in London full time, I was then working from home full time. And obviously, I haven't got I didn't have like a massive like an office set up in a certain room in the house. So I had an office in my room and I was kind of working from there. But you don't realise kind of what being in the same room day in, day out over time, like humans are social creatures by nature, right? Like kind of not having that as much or anywhere near social interaction, I think had a big effect. But at that time, it was quite difficult to see that. But then over time, like I was just getting like, obviously really bad anxiety. It was very much heightened to the point where I then went and referred myself, but was getting a lot of symptoms off the back of the anxiety as well, which then led into making things worse. But obviously happy to say that I'm in a much better place now regarding that anxiety, just through taking, one big game changer was the fact of actually going back to work like part-time in the office. That was a big game changer, but there's also other aspects of kind of obviously lifestyle, like meditation was a big one that helped with it. But obviously it is a good point to reflect on that now, but I can only imagine if I had that experience, that there's obviously a lot of other people that had similar experiences or obviously worse experiences than I had, and it was pretty bad for me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and what you're saying there about didn't have a office set up at home, like not many people do. If you're fortunate enough to have an office in your house, then not too bad, because you can get up and go into the office. You still got the workspace there, which makes you feel like you are at your workplace.
Yeah.
And you can sort of shut off from the rest of the house then. if you do have other people in the house who are working from home as well, or people who can't work from home, people who are on the tools, and they're not allowed to work with whatever they do, and they're trying to occupy their mind, it can be very distracting as well when other people are in the house.
100%.
Especially when you're going on a lot of calls and things. And, you know, with the technology and being able to do Teams and Zoom and having all these meetings over a laptop, companies weren't too worried about the working from home, I don't think.
So, I don't know, like, obviously I'm in sales, so they're thinking, oh, no one's going to be doing no work if they're working from home. But what I do recruitment, right? So we work with a lot of companies, and a lot of companies actually had capacity to, I guess, like put phone calls through to people from home. But I feel like that there's a certain element of, probably in some industries, people were kind of just left their own devices. But like, obviously in mine, it was quite not massively tracked, but people were kind of still on top of your activity. Yeah. So to be honest, it like kind of in a sense that at least I was still having that interaction work wise. Whereas like depending what job you're doing, like you might just be sitting there on your own, like doing admin and stuff for all that time, which is obviously not going to be the most exciting thing anyway, but probably not going to help that situation either.
No, not at all.
Love a bit of admin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And you know what? With Teams, like I never worked from home, right, throughout the whole of COVID. And maybe I worked a few days here and there because of the game that I'm in, plumbing and heating, basically in the office. But when I left the job was just 3 weeks before the pandemic started. Then I went to a new role and I thought, oh shit, I'm not going to be able to work, right? This job, I could have been working from home.
Yeah.
Anyways, luckily enough, they was like, no, you can still come into the office. There was only me and the director in the office. And it was all right. So like the working from home thing I never experienced. So COVID to me wasn't too impactful because I was still getting up every day, going to work, coming home. It was quite normal for me still. Obviously, it was just dead outside. There was nothing going on. Nowhere was open. So yeah, I can't relate in terms of the working from home, but I can only imagine having to work from home for that period of time, 2 years. I'm not sure if people probably are still working from home.
Yeah, I feel like some people are.
Yeah.
Like, but probably I feel like the people are now have kind of made that conscious choice to work from home because most companies, like, depending on what you're doing, like they want you back in at least part-time at the moment, right? So, and I would guess if people are taking that choice now, then hopefully they probably haven't had the same experiences as us, because I wouldn't be going back to working fully remote at this stage. Don't get me wrong, like I feel like I'll probably be in a better place to do it now, like kind of just with the tools I've learned off the back of my previous experience. But again, like I know that having that social interaction is, but also having a split time where I can work a couple of days just works the best for me.
100%. That I think that is like the perfect job.
Yeah.
Like split office and at home. Me personally, I'd work from home if I could.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But you know, I say that now because everything's still open. You could go to a coffee shop on your lunch, or maybe work from a coffee shop for an hour or two, whatever. But obviously during that time you couldn't. You had to be indoors. You know, I've had people close to me like who do work on Teams, and as you were saying there, like people might not stay on top of their work because you haven't got eyes on you as such. But on Teams it shows like the green sign to say you're online, right? Or it goes amber when you're not. I know loads of people who are in bed just, you know, like just flicking the laptop just to make it look like you're active.
100%. Do you know what? For me, I would generally say it probably made. What's the best word for it? Like, I was probably more focused at home in the office just because there wasn't really any distractions. Whereas, like, don't get me wrong, I could still be focused in the office, right? But there's more distractions there. But then again, like, people, like, there are always going to be people just going to take that chance, obviously, take a load off in it and make the most of it. And if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing, you know? But yeah, I definitely think that's why. Like, for me, obviously, in my job, like, there's obviously, like you were saying, like, Teams, they can see where you're online and shit. And, like, if I was on the flip side, I'd probably be keeping track of it. Because, you know people are going to be skiving, man. 100%. So, but like, for example, my job, if you're skiving, it's only going to be you that it kind of impacts because it's obviously kind of more performance-based. But yeah, I'm sure there's probably still a bit of that going on now when people are working from home, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Fair play, Char, if you are.
There you go.
But, cool. So, as a whole, anyway, young people extremely impacted by the pandemic in all terms of socializing, unable to do that, seeing their friends. When you do think about young people, if you are in your your late teens, 18, 19, you probably just finished school, right?
Yeah.
And you're now going into a job, it's like where you're in the big bad world now.
Yeah, definitely.
And like to have that taken away from you probably was very impactful on a lot of younger people. I think going into work and socializing and meeting new people and being in that environment is quite a character builder. And to not have that and then be 20 or 21 when you finally go into an office, probably a little bit daunting. I'm not, you know what I mean? Because they're probably so used to working from home. Like that's their job has been from home.
Yeah. And also, I think with young people, right, like the older you get, generally, the more independent you become as a person. So, in a sense, having that, being older and having that, I guess, having more independence and being used to maybe being in a scenario where you just kind of left your own devices on your own time, so you're probably going to be more prepared for that. Whereas, obviously, when you're coming out of school, you're spending every day with all your pals, like all the time. And then, like, when you're not at school, you're still really doing the same thing, obviously, because you have less stuff going on when you're younger, and you generally have a bit more time to be around your friends all the time because you have lesser responsibility. So, from going from that to nothing I think, would be obviously a much bigger jump in terms of like how social young people had been up to that point compared to maybe someone who's a bit older. And also, if you're coming out of school, right, like, don't get me wrong, when you're 18, you're just getting to that point where you can obviously go out and enjoy certain things, like the pub and stuff, which you want to go and do. And it's like, obviously, some people had those years taken away from them. Luckily, we didn't have them taken away. Like, we got to enjoy those ones. But obviously, some people, like, they're not going to have ever experienced that, which obviously would obviously, I guess, make quite a significant change. But even when I did look at the stats before it, I can imagine it could have been quite, obviously, like a negative impact for young people, but I didn't imagine it being, I guess, as severe as the stats kind of told us or told me. So, it was definitely interesting to see them.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so true what you're saying there about young people not being able to experience these things when you are of a legal age, 18. And especially for, like, birthdays and things.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably shit. And imagine like your 18th or your 19th and it's in lockdown, I'd be fuming.
You'd have to just do a belated one, innit?
Yeah, 100%. There's only so much house party you can do.
For real, man, for real.
But onto a statistic, as you're saying, so 64% of teenagers during that time felt that they had no one to talk to. Yeah. That's a huge, huge statistic when we're talking teenagers. Millions of people, over half of them felt that way. And you can imagine, especially when you are that young, right? And maybe you haven't been the most sociable person during school. And, you know, you haven't sort of blossomed yet. You haven't sort of found who you are and like, your character. Like, if you are a person who has struggled with that in school, then to be locked down, it might have very limited sources to talk to about how you're feeling. So that's a massive issue,
Could be even more isolated. And also, like, we forget further education as well. Like, it's a case, like, obviously, for me, I left school at 16. I was working from then, right? But obviously, other people may be going to a place where they're going to be, like, depending on their age, college, university, do you know what I mean? Which obviously has very big social elements to it as well. So, like, that gets put on hold. How does that change people's lives, you know? But also, look, you're right. Like, probably my experience in school is I was someone who I did have quite a lot of friends, to be honest, but at this stage, looking back, I can fully appreciate, obviously, that's not the experience everyone had, and that's not me saying that the experience I've had having loads of friends compared to like maybe someone with a few, it is the better or worse like situation to be in, right? But what I can say is in that scenario, with the scenario we experienced with the pandemic, someone who's maybe got like one or two close friends were there at school, depending on the scenario of people's lives, is probably more likely to be more isolated and kind of not have people to talk to. But something I just thought about from that that's quite worrying as well. Not what, maybe worrying's the wrong word, but it's like if I was a parent, which I'm not obviously, but thinking about that, it's like not having anyone to talk to, but the likelihood is they're going to be at home with their parents. So there's clearly a stigma there between people thinking that they can go and, which we spoke about before, right? Go and speak to their parents about it also at that young age. So like, how do we change that as well? Like feeling comfortable, because if you haven't got friends, then you at least want some family you can go to, which that statistic tells us that 64% of young people didn't feel comfortable enough really to do that, or that wasn't a thought that arose to them to do straight away. Whereas for me now, but honestly, probably not when I was that age. Maybe when I got to a certain point, because obviously I experienced quite significant mental health issues in my teenage years, right? That I did go to my friends, but for most people, if they don't have friends to go to or family, then it's going to be left to themselves, which is probably going to make things worse.
Yeah, 100%. And being a parent and seeing your child at home, and knowing that they're in their room all the time and, you know, it's locked down and things, and you probably could tell that something's off. Obviously, you surely like you must recognize like they're young, yeah. They don't want to be in here all day. Like this is probably really shit for them. When you're an adult and you've got kids and a home and things, all right, you don't want to be locked in either, but it's not too sore, yeah, because you're not missing out on a lot.
Your missus already had you locked down before the pandemic. You know what I mean? Actually, I've got a bit more freedom now.
No, we've got a bit of bond in that.
Mate, she lets me in the garden.
That's it. Or, you know, like being a dad and that the weather was really nice in the summer. You probably enjoyed a few beers in the garden, chilling out in your garden.
That's it.
Like, do you know what I mean? It's not that deep, but kids want to be out, man.
100%.
Like young people just want to be having fun and gallivanting about. So yeah, it must have been hard. But this is where I think parents need to recognise and be a lot more communicated with their children to just open up them conversations and let them know that it's all right. I see something on Instagram the other day about a dad who put a note in his daughter's drawer, right? So his two daughters in one of their drawers when they were young. And it was a note saying, if you ever feel like when you're older you can't talk to me, make sure you look back at this note and know that I'm always there for you. I thought that was a really clever thing to do, because it's just a simple reminder that, you know, like, that's my dad, like he's there for me, you know what I mean, no matter what age I am. Because as you do get older, it's natural for you to go on your own path, to live your own life. But your parents are your parents, and your family's your family. And as we said in the episode about opening up to families, it should be something that shouldn't be questioned.
That's it. And it kind of links back in, obviously, to one of our main messages on why that stuff like that doesn't happen a lot. It is the stigma. And it's kind of like, you want to normalise these types of conversations when there's not something wrong. So when there is, it's something where it's like someone's, like, all he feels open for it and comfortable doing it. Like, just even like checking in. And I'm not like, don't get me wrong, like I'm sure there is a lot of scenarios with people who are parents and have kids and they do that. So it's not a case that because like we have no kids, right? So not knocking people that may say, oh, all parents don't do this. But I feel like kind of normalising that chat, like, oh, is everything okay with you? Like, how's your mind doing? Before there's something wrong, will then make those conversations a lot easier down the line. But what you said there about what you saw on Instagram, I think was a really clever idea, and that's probably something that stuck with his child for the long run. Obviously, up until the point that maybe they didn't need to speak to their parents, and probably something like that might make you feel more at ease anyway. So it probably has an impact. I'm not saying that it would like massively prevent the chances of someone having mental health, but it probably make them feel a bit more comfortable around that scenario if they were experiencing it down the line, because that they know that automatically they're not on their own. Whereas we all know that deep down, but in those moments, sometimes it can feel like that, you know?
Yeah, 100%. But then there's another statistic, which is kind of a flip side to what we've been discussing there, is 40% of young people said it was a positive thing spending more time with family whilst being locked down. Again, it can build stronger bonds between you and your parents or whoever you're living with, of course, because you've got to spend a lot more time around them than you would do if everything was normal, which is a good thing, because that obviously creates stronger bonds and enables stronger conversations to be had. But in the same time of doing that, that statistic might not be based on 40% of young people felt that they could talk more to their parents. They might have just liked to be spending a bit more time with them. But as we know, like being depressed and having anxiety and having a mental health issue, no matter how old you are, you might not want to talk to someone, no matter how strong your bond is. So it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a little bit, it does show both sides, right? And it's like, also there's loads of variables. It's like, okay, but like, so 64% of them were experiencing being able to talk to anyone, but how many of this 40% of people like were actually maybe feeling that way or had mental health issues at that point? Hopefully not a lot of them, but in that sense, I feel like you could still have the mental health issues and still see it in a positive light, that you're spending more time around your family. And it also, I think that what that speaks to again is that people know that maybe they can go and have those conversations, or like that they don't feel like it's a categorically they couldn't speak to their family about it, but they just don't want to. Because that's what I would take from both statistics together. Because you can know it's positive, but does that mean you're going to action it? Because obviously lesser people think it's positive than them feeling like they've got no one to speak to, right? So what about that 20% in the middle? Like what are they feeling like as well? But I think what I would just take from that one is that probably more people should feel positive about speaking to their family as well, you know, like what about the other 60% of people? Did they not feel it was positive, or do they just not in the mindset where they're actually giving something like that a chance to actually speak to their family in lockdown?
Yeah, or potentially they already had the good relationships and
Yeah.
it was just normal for me. And yeah, in regards to the talking and opening up, which we promote and, has worked for us, maybe young people of that 40% might have just found it that they was going through a hard time, but just spending time with their family without talking about it maybe might have been helping them in the background. And, that's a good thing if it has as well.
Definitely.
But that's where you've got to learn and, teach young people to recognise when you get to a point that you do have to open up and you do need to let people aware of what you're going through, so people can offer that further support and get a bit more deeper into what's actually really going on. But yeah, like anxiety as well through COVID, I could imagine it must have been so rife throughout the whole country, man.
Mate, there's definitely like, cause I know when we were speaking with Sam on the live and stuff, he was speaking about like different aspects of it, and there was definitely a significant rise in anxiety. But I think sometimes people, like for me, like I definitely had space of that before, but it wasn't fully realised until I was in that point. So which at this stage I can only look back and I guess see as a positive, because I was able to realise and obviously action that to kind of bring myself out of that circumstance. But I think that's like maybe kind of having a lot of time to yourself, you become more conscious of yourself, like you're not around other people. So for me it was like I was feeling a lot more things like in my body, like in terms of like heart palpitations, but even outside of that I was just very aware of like my heart, I'd just be sitting there, like not having palpitations, but like near enough every beat I could feel it. And in a sense, that can kind of then you kind of think like, oh, what's wrong? Then that leads into the worrying again. Then you're kind of back in that cycle, and then it became more about the anxiety of the health issues than other than the actual symptoms. I was like of anxiety, core anxiety, like in terms of like your mind running, like worrying about stuff originally, then became more focused on the health side of things, which then progressively made the health issues get slightly worse until I was at a point where it's like, obviously managed to take steps to help myself, and then those faded away. But it definitely was a cycle, I think, that was sped up in that time.
100%. Health anxiety is something that we are going to touch base on in the future, because we understand there's different forms of anxiety. Health anxiety is a really scary one. It is when the heart palpitations start coming and you think, this is it, I'm done. Yeah.
I went A&E, bruv. Like,
same, mate. I went to A&E as well. I thought, I ain't risking it, mate.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's like, mate, even in your neck, like your vein, you're getting tightness of chest, your veins are popping. You know what I mean?
You know what I do?
Gonna turn into the Incredible Hulk or something, you know what I mean? Fucking
even that'll just pop.
Yeah, literally, bro. It's mad experience though, mate.
And I'm telling you, like, when you get all these things and like a stiff neck, chest pains, your heart's beating fast, I'm straight on the blower, and I'm like, what are these symptoms?
Yeah.
Immediately heart attack.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
Makes you feel worse,
Makes you feel worse. You think, oh, God, this is going to be it, innit? I'm like 23 or something. I'm about to have a heart attack. I'm probably the youngest in history, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I went to, when I did go to there, it was like, how old are you? I was like, I think I was 24. I was 24. And she goes, oh, no, you'll be all right. Then I was like, listen, I'm not all right, yeah? I was like, something's happening. She was like, you wouldn't be having a heart attack. Proper calm.
Yeah.
Imagine I was, though.
Yeah.
It takes it's not straight away. It can be a
I know. Look, with me, what they do is they do an ECG on you. So they plug them little things all over you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It is a weird experience though when you haven't gone through it before. But even the first time I went, they were like, "Yeah, it's probably just anxiety and stuff like that." And then like, do you know what? It's like I actually forgot about this. They put me on beta blockers. Do you they basically like. Because they weren't sure originally. They like regulate your heart rhythm, right? But then they're also like kind of anxiety focused as well, right? And then even like, again, we spoke about medicine before, and definitely medication is what certain people need in certain circumstances. Don't get me wrong, like obviously I can only speak from my own experiences with that. And then for that, I was taking that for like a week, and I thought, nah, this isn't really doing me any solid. And I think more of like for me, taking the medicine was like more me, like I'm acknowledging that I have these health problems. It's making it worse, so I stopped that. But yeah, it's just like it's a whole lot of confusion as well, and that just it all just adds to the pot, I think.
Yeah, 100%. They done the ECGs on me, and I think I had 2, and then they also done a chest X-ray. Yeah, probably just to see if everything's all right in there. Never mind the 100 cigarettes I smoked on the weekend before.
Yeah, for real, mate. They're not helping either.
But but I was glad that they done that, you know, because like it's good to know, innit?
Puts you more at ease. Yeah,
it does.
yeah.
Like, just to make sure everything's okay.
Because then you have that logic. There's like, now I know it's not that. Listen, mate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
They told you.
But that's what it's like, mate. For real, bro. I can't lie.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll touch base on health anxiety a little bit more in a little bit more detail. But onto another statistic. This one is probably not going to shock people, but it's a big one. 80% of young people felt it was negative to not be able to spend time with their friends. Yeah, 100%. I felt that. Do you know what I mean? I think anyone was feeling that. It was not good, was it? Like, especially as I was saying, the weather was nice. Like, you might have wanted to have a drink or whatever you was doing, or you just wanted to go out that day. You couldn't do it.
That's it.
And you know, obviously, no one's fortunate enough, or not many people, to have their mates live next door. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where it will come down to social media and staying in contact like that. But yeah, again, going back to the young people on it, again, it's just missing out on the whole experience of life, isn't it?
That's it. Obviously, again, like, comes back to that point, and we kind of said at that age, like, you're probably going to be, don't get me wrong, like, obviously, as you get, like, other ages, you're going to be out and about quite a bit, but probably, like, when you're that young, you're probably, like, going out the most that you go out at any time. Do you know what I mean? Because you're new to it, you're just trying to make the most of it, and obviously, that got taken away. But I think, like, I was just thinking, like, who's the other 20%? Do you know what I mean?
Who are you?
No, I'll stick on my own, mate. You know what I mean? But don't get me wrong, like, it's good to be able to be independent and spend some time on your own. But I feel like maybe they were the 20% that maybe live with some of their pals, you know. I reckon that was
true.
But yeah, like, I think it's all round, like, all ages, right? Like, any situation, like COVID, obviously, is very much magnified, but any circumstance in life, like, you want to be able to be around the people you want to be around. So I can only guess that if you, like anything, if you can't do something or you can't do something you really want to do, it's not going to have a positive effect on you in life, right?
No.
And that's definitely something we saw from that, maybe in more of the realer sense, because it was like law that you couldn't do it. Like, I don't think I've never experienced like someone saying you can't actually go and see people before, you know, which obviously for people that was very difficult, especially like with older members of the family and stuff like that, if you don't live with them. But at least we're out of it now. But I would hope that obviously some of these statistics, if they were taken maybe now or towards, like, obviously these are recent, but let's say at this stage now where we're fizzling out of this place, that hopefully they've improved quite a bit.
100%. Yeah, it's really, really sad actually what you're saying there about the older people in family, especially those who are in care homes. I've got friends who were going to see their grandparents or great grandparents, whatever, and it was behind the glass screen.
Yeah.
Of course, they're very vulnerable, right? Then not just to COVID, to anything.
Yeah.
When you're at that age, so you do have to be careful. But obviously, family members were passing away, and when they were being taken into hospital, you couldn't go into hospital. Yeah. But then you got the likes of the people who run the country having parties. Yeah. So you can imagine the frustration, because I would be seriously pissed.
Trust me. Oh, don't get me started on them, mate.
Yeah, like it's a complete.
Who's even inviting them lot to parties, bro?
Do you know what I mean?
I'm saying? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't
keep your wig at home.
Literally, bro. Like, I don't know. Like, I think like just the one thing I'll say about whole scenario is like I just don't think this is light as well. I don't think they handled the whole situation the best.
Nah, definitely not. No, but yeah, we'll leave that.
leave that there. It's not a political podcast, you know. So
no, it's not.
Yeah, we'll leave it.
We're not too much into politics. I'll be honest. Or I'm not.
Nah, I'm not really. I just like knowing what's going on, you know.
Yeah, same. But whoever sits in a chair is going to do what they want, aren't they? Right. So now let's sort of move on to adults. So it's a statistic of adults who have anxiety and depression, or those who didn't and were experiencing symptoms, rose from 11% to 41%. That's a massive rise.
Yeah, and that's up to nearly half of people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Nearly half of people. Like, this is just mad. Like imagine if like, it's just, if half of people had their arms broken. You know what I mean? Like, when people be like, what's going on? Everyone's arms breaking. You know what I mean? But it's like, no one really says too much about this. But like, that's a massive jump. That's almost like just under 30%. So that shows you how much it's that isolation, that whole scenario made things worse. And also, like, anxiety links into fear. There was a lot of fear about the virus. So like, even if people are around other people, like, there's that fear, like, and this is one of the reasons why in that period I wasn't really watching the news, because like, hearing those statistics doesn't really do you any favors. Like, it doesn't make you feel better about that. But just that significant jump where again, like, where is that now? Is it the case that that's come back down, or is it a case now that people have actually taken this in a positive light and gone out and found out more about the mental health issues, anxiety they're experiencing? Because how would that even affect the mental health services? Because they've more than doubled the amount of people that potentially need their assistance,
100%. And do you know what's strange as well? So, like, I remember during the pandemic where there was a lot of conversations about people having anxiety and things, right, being locked down, and there was an uproar about it. Of course, that would have reflected on the NHS as well, yeah? And that's what it was all about. It's keeping the NHS as free as possible from everything else, apart from COVID. And there was a lot of conversations going on. People were talking a lot about the impacts that was having on their mental health. But this is like where you need people to be, but not just throughout COVID, after COVID as well. Because now, once COVID has sort of died down, you don't hear too much about it anymore. So potentially it was only a stage for some people because it was not what they're used to. And, it still needs to be addressed and looked at because it can potentially damage you for the future. And it definitely has for people.
Yeah.
100%.
Because that figure's not back at 11% now, mate. Do you know what I mean? It's it's not like it just goes back. It's the same thing as like certain things happen and they don't go back to the way they were before, which we're seeing in a lot of different areas now off the back of the pandemic, right? But it's a case of like, is there now added support for this extra amount of people that, or like the area we've seen that rise? I don't think so. Obviously, the NHS are pretty strained already. And like for me, just slightly off subject, but I think what's needed for mental health as a whole is more funding, because at the end of the day, what we can offer people, the services, comes from funding. But like, or in the pandemic, like these statistics are out there. Like the government obviously will be aware of these statistics. Was there an extra effort in the pandemic to go out and help this extra, or like almost double the people, more than double the people that need assistance? And you're right in what you said. It was almost like, if in a sense, like, don't get me wrong, obviously it was a massive issue, but it's like more like, okay, well, if it's not that, it's not that and you're not dying, you can park your other issues aside because this is the main problem at the moment. But that, like, if off the back of that, there's like just significant people that just because of like even the economy, the way that went when it happened, that are very affected by this. People will die off the back of that, right? And it's just like, just because there's one issue, it was kind of seemed like that everything got parked to the side. Like I can tell you guaranteed, like for me, I had referrals, mental health and outside of mental health. Like outside of mental health, it's moving very, very slow. And even I was quite lucky. And in that time, when I referred myself to mental health, I got seen very quickly. But I've spoken to people in that time who didn't maybe went through their GP and not direct like I did, that it took a long time to actually see someone in the end, and like what damage is done in that time before then. So, but that just seemed to not be something, I guess, in the minds of the people making choices at that point.
Yeah, 100%. And that was the same for me. Like, as I said to you, I went through the GP for my therapy. That was during COVID, and it was a slow burner. It did take a little while, and that I understood. I do get it that they was under a lot of pressure, right? And there is a lot of vulnerable people who was suffering with breathing problems from COVID, and you've got to be careful with that. And you do have a lot of people with conditions already. Was it the NHS's choice to prioritise every single patient who reported COVID? I really doubt it.
No.
As I say, there's always someone in the chair who's going to make that decision, right? Because they need to put that much pressure on. This is a virus that's come out and it is deadly, but it's not to everyone. Yeah. So,
it's again, like people with cancer not being seen,
mate.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, and that's like, for me, that just doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, like it's just like that's I think that's just enough said on that thing. Like, but
cancer, like, it's cancer. 1 in 2 people get cancer in their lifetime. Yeah, like cancer is a real issue. Dangerous disease, mate. Yeah, that does kill people on the daily. Literally. Yeah, like. It's mad. I've been first-hand experiencing someone who's had cancer, right? And it's like, what the fuck? Imagine being, a cancer patient, and going through this traumatic stage in your life, not knowing what's coming next, right? Trying to spend time with your family and your friends and your kids or whatever, all your loved ones, and having that taken away, and furthermore, not having
the treatment.
Yeah. What?
But then someone else, like for me, like I could be someone who maybe had like symptoms from COVID, like as a young person, had gone in there, and I probably would have been seen. I would have probably got seen into a hospital bed quicker than someone who had cancer. Do you know what I mean? It got treatment for that quicker. Then when it's like, don't get me wrong, like both subjects needed attention, you know, or like all these subjects needed attention. Whereas it's like, I think that over the next couple of years, we'll probably see like significant backlash just off the back of how many people with so many different illnesses had their referrals postponed in a lot of cases for years. Do you know what I mean? Like you could, like certain people, they could have passed by the time it could come to the time when they should have had their treatment if they're suffering from cancer, because depending on what stage they're dealing with and like what the seriousness of it is. But it's something that I don't know, like hopefully that things are like getting back to normal now in terms of the speed, but I just think that must have had a significant impact on people as a whole, to be honest with you.
100%. And you know, as we were saying at the start, thank God it is sort of coming to the end now. They have eased up all the restrictions. You don't need to wear masks on transport things or when you're out or in shops. You don't necessarily require to be vaccinated to travel now. I think the UK have said it's okay.
I think so, yeah.
To come into the UK, without being vaxxed. Of course. No, I'm joking. Yeah. I'm not vaxxed anyway.
No, neither am I. But mate, like the gates were open when it was going on. You know what I mean? Like people could come in then. Whereas like, do you know what I mean? It was that the best decision? But we had a political podcast, so yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we sort of wrapped up COVID. COVID was obviously a very, very hard time. Something that no one was used to before. It did put a massive impact on people's mental health, especially anxiety and depression, a big rise in that. And hopefully people now, with the restrictions stopping and getting back to normality, find their route on their mental health to ease that down and, you know, get back to the person that they were.
Definitely. And obviously, like, obviously we've spoken about our experiences across COVID, like, obviously for myself, like, had very severe anxiety. So if that's something that you've gone through, like, coming out the back of it now, but you don't feel like much has changed since the pandemic's eased up, then give us a shout. Like, happy to obviously talk more in depth about our experiences and kind of what worked for us on there as well. But this kind of obviously brings me to one of my favourite parts of the podcast. So it's the quote of the day, and you're gonna take the lead on this one today, aren't you?
I am, yeah. This one.
Make sure you treat the quote well, yeah.
I know. I'll be honest, I'm struggling to read the handwriting.
Oh yeah, go on.
No, I'm joking. Quote of the day this week is: "Trust yourself. You survived a lot."
Fucking great one, isn't it?
Great one. Short, sweet, powerful,
concise.
But
with big meaning and a big message. So like again, like what that means for me, the most immediate thing is like, I've been through challenging circumstances in life, right? But I've overcome every one of them, and so have a lot of people. If you're standing there, you've overcome every one of the challenging circumstances that you've had, right? So respect yourself for that. Yeah. Like, it's obviously things that, don't get me wrong, things are always going to get difficult again, but trust yourself. You've backed yourself before you've come through it, so it's nothing new. Like, you can do it again, and there will be a place where you have to do that again. Just learn from the situation, you know.
Exactly. I think that's spot on, to be honest. And it is a lot about trusting yourself. We put up a post recently on Instagram about trust your thoughts, trust your mind. When like it's crucial to trust it in all aspects, because when you recognise something is wrong, when you do have an issue, that's trusting your mind and understanding it. Yeah. And also about, you know, the Instagram post was trust your gut and your instincts and things, and it all does come into that. But you know, you survived a lot. Everyone has survived a lot, and going through COVID was a massive thing, wasn't it? And you know, hopefully, pray to God we don't see another one of those in our lifetimes, because I think if it happened again, one, I'm not sure anyone would listen anyway. But for two, it's just worrying about the impact that it can have on people's mental health, and of course, we're trying to open up the conversations on it to help people with mental health. So yeah, trust in yourself. You've been through a lot.
Yeah, and one thing you said there I liked is about your gut. Trust your gut feeling. And obviously people can see, right? Some people, they actually call the gut, the stomach, the second brain, right? Yeah. Because like obviously your gut's very far removed. Head's here, stomach's here, right? From your head, like, so you know when you get a gut feeling, intuition, like don't always there's certain points to trust your thoughts and certain points to not. But what you can trust is your being and your gut feeling. So like it's like when something feels wrong to someone, generally they get that intuition, they don't want to do it. So you have to know when, again, like to trust what your mind's telling you, and but also know yourself and kind of know that you will make the best decisions for yourself most of the time, but there may be times where you're suffering from mental health. You need to trust yourself that you need to reach out for someone else and kind of seek that help as well.
Yeah, and trust yourself that you're going to make the right decision.
Yeah.
Because then you just get familiar with making the right decision all the time. And it's when you worry about the decisions that you're making, or should I talk to someone, should I not?
Yeah.
It's like, that's where the gut does kick in. And when you are in certain situations and scenarios where you do get that gut feeling, it is a link from your brain telling you something's wrong, but it's just a physical feeling.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times, mate, like when I get a proper gut feeling, it's correct.
Yeah, mate, because like, mate, our nerves go to our brain, our nerves run out throughout our body, so that links into that, but also very much links into anxiety as well, as we've gone through before as well. So, but yeah, definitely, obviously, if you've got any, again, one thing we haven't said, I'm open to suggestions on quotes as well, but like I will be pretty picky on them, like it's my baby part of the podcast. So but do send them in, because like for me on a daily basis, I'm looking at positive quotes. So definitely recommend it, guys.
100%. And make sure you get involved in everything on our Instagram as well, guys. All the polls, any questions, just be free with it. Don't feel like anyone's going to judge you. No one can see your answer. Only me and Dom can see your answers, and we ain't going to air them. And it's just good to know as well what our followers are experiencing now, what they've experienced before, and also just their general opinion on everything. And also it's nice to hear a little bit of feedback on the podcast.
Yeah. Trust me, but like put yourself out there a bit, mate. You might enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, we definitely enjoy doing this. So and obviously you're only going to be speaking with like-minded individuals. So yeah, anybody, we definitely love to hear your perspective. Anyway.
There's a seat waiting for you right there.
We saved it for you. So.
All right, perfect. Well, another good episode.
Defo,
it's good to be back, mate. Good to chat as always.
100%, brother.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening and watching, guys. Hope you all have a fantastic week in whatever you're doing. And please subscribe, like, comment, and share.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers.